You know, when I got this phone call from Grace, I said, okay, Grace, I'd be more than happy to be here on August 4th. How many other communities will be here? And I was hoping no more than 3. And she said, well, just Shelby Township. And I thought, whoa, this is definitely an honor. I don't think we've actually ever had our State of the Township for just Shelby Township. So it is an honor to be here, and I want to thank every one of you, and especially the Macomb Chamber of Commerce for doing a great job that they do in our community. Thank you very much. I had all these numbers and graphs, and I did something I usually don't do. I go home and I talk about my business, and I was telling my wife about all these numbers, and she looked at me and she said, really? And she said, 8 o'clock in the morning? I gave it some thought, and I thought, yeah, maybe I won't go so heavy on numbers, because obviously what we do in Shelby Township, we're quite dependent on where the numbers are. So what I decided to do is I thought, look, when people want to know the health of any community, the 3 major things they want to know about: 1, finances; 2, public safety; and 3, quality of life. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And if I can get this clicker to work, hold on here. There we go. And then what I want to do is, after I make a few comments about each of these buckets, we'll end up with Shelby Township 2015. We want to recognize 4 people in this community that have really done an outstanding job. They have made our community a better place to live, a better place to do business, a better place to learn, and a better place to play. And for each of those categories, we'd like to recognize someone. But I will say, though, in doing that, it seems like we always leave someone out. So this is really our first year doing this, and obviously if you have any ideas for this, we can talk about that later. So that'll be the last part. So let me start with the finances in Shelby Township. Really what I'd like to start with, and I think you're going to be thinking, wait a minute, job evaluations. Why am I talking about job evaluations as we're talking about finances? Well, I'm really proud of the fact that we've started something in Shelby Township 3 years ago with our directors, with all of our directors. We actually sat down with them, and together with board input from the Board of Trustees, we gave them goals. And we gave them a review mid-year, we calibrated, and of course we talked a little bit about developmental needs, because everybody has them. But what it really did, though, is it took the vision of the Board of Trustees, and it gave us a chance to strategize and put all these goals together so that we could be ensure that we were going to achieve our goals at the end of the year. So I remember at Pepsi-Cola, actually it's PepsiCo, I remember the chairman of the board, and this is a chairman of the board, not Pepsi-Cola North America, but PepsiCo. He was ahead of everything: Frito-Lay, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell at the time. And he said he wanted one thing to happen. He wanted a Pepsi-Cola display and a Frito-Lay display in every store in America next to each other. That's the only thing he ever talked about. Well, we thought it was a done deal because he's the chairman of the company, right? It wasn't. A year went by, and there were still displays all over the stores, in the major stores. So finally, he did something that I thought was pretty smart. He met with all his vice presidents, and he said, okay, starting now, it's on your job evaluations, I want 95% coverage in all the stores. I'm telling you that next day, everybody, the whole sales force knew exactly what needed to be done. And by Super Bowl Sunday, I don't think it was 95% coverage, I think it was 99. Now, we don't give 35, 40% bonuses in Shelby Township. You'll be glad to know if you're a taxpayer. However, the nice thing about it is we do have a bump of about 2 or 3%, and we do reward our employees. So I really think this has a big impact on where we go in terms of finances. And I want to thank especially 2 people, our HR director, Lisa Suda, and also our trustee, Paula Filer, who put a lot of time into this. And I think it's a great thing for our organization. And I'm not saying it's perfect. We're going to be making some changes next year. We're actually getting input from employees. But that's one thing that I wanted to put under the bucket of finances. And I'm very thankful that the Board of Trustees supported these 2 people as they went forward. We had a new board, I think, in 2009. And the one thing we didn't have was cost allocation. And I'll never forget when I went down to the finance department, I found out that in our finance department, they were doing all paychecks, as they should. But they were actually incurring all the costs: material, labor, paper, everything for these costs. So in other words, at the police department, over 100 employees, they had no costs in their P&L. No cost at all. They were actually getting a free ride. And by the way, I was getting a free ride too. I have 2 employees in my department, myself and my deputy. So we were all getting free rides. But if you really want to measure something, or if you really want to manage something, you have to be able to measure it. So we had no overhead. We didn't have a mechanism to take these overhead costs and apply them proportionally to where these resources were being used. So one of the first things we did, and board members, you remember, it was a rough exercise, but we got through it, and it took many months. We actually did put a cost allocation tool in place, and I'm happy to say that today it's actually one of the very fundamental tools we have in Shelby Township that gives us the ability to measure, to the nth degree if we want to, within reason, each department. And it's not because we're trying to be big brother. We're giving them the means to measure themselves so they know exactly where they are. They can manage their departments, and they can come back to the Board of Trustees and tell us exactly what they need. Because our job as a Board of Trustees is to make sure that we meet or exceed the needs and expectations of all of you. You're our bosses. And the only way we can do that is by going to our directors and asking them, what do you need? So they can actually go up, because they know, we don't. They're the ones that deal with the performers, and the performers are the ones that are closest to you. So that's the way we actually run our organization. Some people call that upside down. We call it right side up. And we actually really are on the bottom, and the performers are on top. And what that means is that we have to have the ability of looking out 4 or 5 years. We really never had a 5-year budget. Forecast. We don't want a 5-year budget, because who can actually look beyond 1 or 2 years? That's a waste of time. But our forecast has all the significant activities that we actually do in Shelby Township. So for the fire station, for example, if you look at it, we can put one up tomorrow. We can staff it with our 6 firemen. We can build it. We have the money, no question about it. But the question is, over a long length of time, 5 years, how will that drain our budget? That's the question. And because of our 5-year forecast, we're able to plug numbers in, and we knew, for example, last year that we weren't ready for this. So we didn't do it last year, and we might be doing it sometime soon, but that 5-year budget is so critical for every decision that our Board of Trustees make. And again, it's the will, the commitment of the Board of Trustees that made this happen, and we were able to move forward on that. And it's like the old saying, if you don't know where you're gonna go, you may miss it when you get there. We're not gonna miss anything, because I have a really good, confident feeling we know exactly where we're going. Okay, so, and then the last thing I want to mention is a capital improvement fund. This is really the 4th tool that we put in place 2 years ago. And I know a lot of you are sitting back saying, like, no kidding, that everybody's got a capital improvement fund. No, not so fast. I think when you look at municipalities, that's not true at all. And I was quite surprised when I took office that we did not have one. And I wasn't the only one. We had sitting board members who wanted to do this long before I got there, but they just didn't have the votes, and they didn't have the commitment from the whole board. So I'm very, very happy to say that, this board, we think alike in a lot of ways. We're very conservative. We don't go in a rainy day fund unless there's a tornado or a thunderstorm, but it's a way of getting things done. So the capital improvement program was so important, because what it did is it kept us from actually saying, let's buy that $1 million whatever, let's do this $500,000 initiative. We can still do that, but you know what we have to do now? We now have to say, okay, if we're going to spend $1 million, which of these 35 projects that we have down on this piece of paper, this capital improvement program, which are we going to take away? Because if we don't take $1 million out of the budget, out of the capital improvement fund, then we can't spend $1 million that we want to spend. I could give you a lot of results, but I think the critical results, and one that we like to talk about a lot, is the general fund. Because the general fund is really the fundamental piece that runs a township. Without the general fund, nothing happens. Now, the police department fund is very important. The fire department fund is very important, don't get me wrong. But all of you people who live in Shelby Township, you pay a millage into those departments. They have their own budget. But the general fund is what keeps everything alive. When the police department or the fire department get in trouble, it's a general fund that has to come up with the money. So a healthy general fund is critical to the health of any community. And that's what we pay very close attention to. And when I say we, I mean every individual on this board. And I'm really happy to have that support. 7th straight surplus in our general budget this year. Now this year, it won't be a big surplus. But the important thing is the way we're managing our money, using the tools I have laid out, I think we're going to be there. And also, I'm happy to announce that I think we're going to have probably a surplus in all three of our major budgets: police, fire, and general budget. I don't think we've done that in 6 years. And the other thing I want to bring out too is that these surpluses I'm talking about actually started with the Great Recession. So as our revenues were declining, we still churned a surplus. And it's not because of any rocket science. It's not because we're really smart. It's because our employees, our department heads, and our board of trustees worked together and got things done. And they know what it means to actually do more with less. And the last thing I want to say is, if you look at all the processes in Shelby Township from A to Z, I haven't counted them, but if you count everything, I was going to say one process would be an expense report, but that's right, we don't do that in Shelby. But whatever the process is, I'm sure we've got 600-700 processes. But if you look at all of them from A to Z, I think the final result measure, how you want to measure the health of a community, should be done by an outside company. And it is. It's called Standard & Poor's. Well, guess what? They gave us our rating last year. And when we took office, I think we had an A or an A+. Today, it's a AA+, which means we need to go one notch more upward to AAA+, and we'll be at the top. So we're not quite there yet. And I don't think we're going to be there in a couple of years, and I'll show you why later in my presentation. But I'm happy to say that the result measure, the health of Shelby Township, is a AA+, and we're all very proud of that. And it's because the work of these folks who have worked together to make this happen. This is not the doing of one or two, it's the doing of 7 people working together on a board of trustees. And I gotta say, it starts with the top of the organization, with the employees, as they are empowered to do the right thing and to bring solutions to their department heads and bring the ideas to the board of trustees. You know what we do save our money. I mean, help me out, board members, but I think our general rainy day fund and a general budget is up to about $12.5 million, correct? Back in 2008, it was about $6 million, so we've doubled it. So people are saying, why are you saving all your money? Well, because the general budget is responsible for the whole township. We have to. And I'm not sure how much higher we'll go, but we're going to continue generating surpluses when we can. However, we don't just save our money, we spend money too, but we spend it very carefully. Count the federal match that the county has gotten for us, we're up to about $35 million that we have spent in Shelby Township of all the tax dollars on roads just in Shelby Township. So that's definitely a record amount for us, and we are dedicated, we are committed to having the best roads in Macomb. By the way, just because you have the best roads doesn't mean they're okay. They're not okay, and we got to get better, and we will. But that's only $7 million that we spent since 2008. We've actually spent we invested $8 million into our infrastructure. Now, if you remember, when we came into office, there was a thing on the wall that for a $20 million police department. Now, that included interest, and that was amortized over 20 years. We said there's no way we could afford that, and because of the 5-year forecast we had, we knew what we were talking about. What we ended up doing is spending $4 million, and we got a beautiful police station, and we paid cash. It's all paid for, thanks to you, the taxpayers. And then here we have a new park in memory of the late Fire Chief Gene Shepard. It's called Gene Shepard Park, and we spent $1 million and we paid cash for that. So if you're keeping track of all the numbers we've put in buildings and parks and roads, we have spent $15 million over since 2008. And this year we're looking at some more expenditures of maybe about $1 million for more road projects that we're discussing right now. And just some good conservative cost accounting from all of our board members, from all of our employees, and also from our directors. Because you know, the big commitment that we all have, I'm talking about this group of people here, the board of trustees, and I mean every one of them, is there will be no millage increase as long as we are here. And by the way, if there is, we're going to have some serious discussion with the folks that pay the taxes. But I don't see any of those conversations happening right now, and I think all of you agree with me on that. The services that our taxpayers and residents expect, we're able to meet those expectations. And sometimes we exceed them. But I think for the most part, we do definitely at least meet them. So among the peers in Shelby Township, we are one of the best investments in Metro Detroit. We always say, please make Macomb your home. That's number one. Make Macomb your home. But make sure you grow with Shelby Township. After you decide on Macomb, you got to come over here and give us a look, because I think we got a lot of great things going. And if taxes are important to you and you need the services, but you want a low tax base and you want a nice home, I think we really have a great product. If you look at the average, and this would be the number of reported crimes, 3,200 is the average. And we are just below that at about 3,000. So hats off to our Chief Schlide and our entire police department. They do a wonderful job. And yes, we do have crime like everybody, but I've got to say though that we really have an aggressive police force. They are on it, and with Bob Schlide now at the head postal chief, things have been happening that we never expected. I could go to the fire department, and I did. And I asked them, what are your main goals for the next 4 or 5 years? And they were all on a piece of paper. They were all numbered, and it was great. And I took that idea and I said, if you guys can do this, we can do this. And some other people on the board already had this idea too, so we just got together and made it happen. So, they have been very good, and they're very serious about this fire station number 5, and we are too. The question is, can we afford it over the long term? It's going to be a drain on our resources, but the ultimate question always has to be for a community, what do you need to be safe? And that's a very important question as well. So I think you're going to see some movement on that very, very soon. I like this slide because it shows all the parklands. And I don't know if you know, Jill, we have 1,100 acres in Shelby Township? Pardon? 1,200 acres in Shelby Township. And by the way, when you look at this chart, you can see we're clearly number one. If you look by the population, we are at about 15 acres per parkland per 1,000 people. So we have about 15.1 acres per 1,000 people. And Mayor Barnett couldn't make it this morning. He had to call it off last minute. I got a phone call from him, but I wanted him to be here because every time he shows a chart, I'm never able to be up at his state of these cities, and I don't expect to be. But if he was here, I would point out to him one more time that, Brian, you got to quit including vacant parking lots in your parkland, because it's got to be well-developed grass and lights and all of that. Joe is actually the one, Mr. Youngblood's the one that heads up the Parks and Rec, and he's done a great job. And I think this is really evidence of Shelby Township. And I just put a random picture up here. I mean, if you haven't been in our parks, you need to take a walk. This is Holland's Park here. I've been through it. I didn't even know this existed until I got elected. I was looking at a map. What is this? Folks, this is just beautiful stuff. But if you ever want anything as far as picnicking, or you want to take a hike, contact Parks and Rec, and they can definitely give you some great direction. So what I'd like to do is we'll start with a better place to live, and I'd like to invite Fire Marshal Steve Herring to the podium so he can make the first presentation.
Ed Young has helped through the years. Various fire marshals have told me that he's done a great job with setting up a program in case of an emergency, shortwave radio, ham radio operators. Cell phones go out. We need to be able to communicate with other communities. Ham radio operators are still somebody that we turn to. Ed, would you please come up here today? On behalf of the Shelby Township Fire Department, we'd like to thank you for all your years of service, what you've done for this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Ed Young, congratulations, and a big thank you from Shelby Township. We do appreciate that. Okay, next I'd like to invite Planning Director Glenn Wynn to the podium for a great place to do business.
I recall a time approximately 15 years ago when much of our vacant industrial land was being rezoned to new housing developments. The common refrain that we heard at that time was that all manufacturing jobs were moving overseas and there was no future for manufacturing in Southeast Michigan. I'm pleased to report that this prediction did not prove to be true. The Township Board maintained the industrial property in the hope that someday we would fulfill our vision of developing the Township's industrial base. The person that turned that dream into reality is Gene DiAugustini. Gene was the transformative developer who acquired Cherry Creek Corporate Park and brought 3 world-class manufacturing businesses to Shelby Township. Through Gene's efforts, Shelby Township is now the home to Javis USA, the Paslin Company, and Transform Automotive. Collectively, these 3 manufacturing establishments contributed over 400,000 square feet of new industrial floor space, over 300 new jobs, and nearly $300,000 in annual property tax revenue. Shelby Township is clearly a much better place to do business due to the contributions of Gene DeAugustini.
Besides helping to lead our community library, Diane spent much of her time over the past 14 years building an outstanding and up-to-date periodical, DVD, and nonfiction book collection. The library sees its use every day as our residents use it to learn and improve their lives. A tired mother browses the parenting section for advice on raising a toddler. Teenagers line up at the reference desk to find SAT books as they apply to go to college. A young man organizing his Eagle Scout project leaves with an armful of construction manuals. And every Friday, our senior men's investment group scours our financial section. From how to fix the transmission in your '74 Dodge Charger, to investigating your family tree, to writing a business plan for a business startup, library databases are a one-stop shop for lifelong learning. Diane also kept our computers in top shape, coordinating the replacement of older models and keeping our public computers healthy so that the thousands of users per month can access information freely. On behalf of the Charter Township of Shelby, our Board of Trustees, our Supervisor Rick Stathakis, and the many, many residents whose lives have been improved by her librarianship, I'm so proud to be able to present the 2015 Great Place to Learn Award to Ms. Diane Burgesson. Thanks.
For the last 15 years, Shelby Township Parks and Recreation Department takes a group of athletes to the Summer Olympics and Winter Olympics. At the opening ceremonies, it's pretty amazing. All the athletes stand up and in unison recite the Special Olympics motto, which is, "Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt." If it wasn't for Shelby Township resident Michael Ward, many of our athletes would not have the chance to compete and or achieve the Special Olympics motto. It is obvious Mike has a special place in his heart for the Special Olympic athletes. Mike volunteers his time taking special needs groups to the Red Wings games, Tigers games, Spartan football games, just to name a few of the events he does. He oversees the race from beginning to end. Mike always makes a special point to donate the funds to the Special Olympic athletes. We are fortunate to be partnered with such a dedicated person that is devoted to helping the special needs population, and we cannot thank him enough. As a child of special needs boy myself, who's 7 years old, attended this local Olympics for the first time, thank you very much, Mike. From all the athletes, Charter Township of Shelby, thank you for all you do and all the time you volunteer.
Thanks, Mike. So that really kind of wraps up for the state of the township, and really I just want to say special thanks to the Board of Trustees, Stanley Grote, Michael Flynn, Paula Filer, Mr. Paul Vire, Mr. Doug Wozniak, and Mr. Nick Nightingale. You guys are a great bunch to work with, but the employees, you're the ones that make it happen. Directors, we love working with you. Keep the ideas coming in. And to the taxpayers, to all of you who have invested in Shelby Township, we love your tax revenue. Thank you. I see we've got Forey Automation in the back. You guys are great partners, and we just appreciate everything you do for our community. Thank you very much. And if I didn't screw up too badly, maybe we'll see you next year. Thanks a lot.
Take my hand and start a brand new day.
Underneath everything we are all people. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.